Okay. We spent some time talking about good agricultural practices, otherwise known as GAP. Also at our purchasing procurement workshop in Ames, Iowa State has some wonderful materials to share with growers and those buying local foods. And not to scare growers, but here's a checklist, front and back, 2 pages of things to look at when you're purchasing local. Strongly recommended visiting the farm or the farmer and grower to see where things are coming from, how water source, if you have a well, is the well kept safe? Can animals wander through the produce? What else? What's the source of water? Packaging. Under USDA guidance, it is perfectly fine for districts to buy produce. It can be trimmed, but you can't make apples into applesauce and sell me applesauce. So you get into the whole user food-friendly form for a school district. What form can it be? Again, pest control, application of fertilizers, especially with manure, when you're applying the manure. So many days, I think it's 120 days before harvest is the guidance. Those kinds of things. If you have farm staff, what are the sanitation practices provided for them? Do they have restrooms, hand washing? All those kinds of things to consider. Okay. Again, we talked a little bit about communicating what you want. In the world of produce, it's the as-purchased produce versus the edible portion. So if I'm buying sweet corn, typically my sweet corn is probably going to come with all the husk, thank you, on it. So if I check the corn, I've got all the husk, and now I've just created garbage, compost. But if I don't have a compost facility,
which you will,
which I will, I might have to take it to the landfill. And if I have to take anything to the landfill, I can be charged by the pound to take tonnage to the landfill. So that's another, we call that indirect cost. So you have to look at how much, what is the edible portion and what you want to use. Again, we talked about placing orders. We have had online ordering for, I can't even remember how many years. So I'm well past the days of calling up the vendor and going, okay, what's your price on apples this week? What's your price on carrots this week? Everything is online. I know instantly where it is, what it is, how much it'll cost me. So I love the idea of here are the growers, here's what they have, and here's what the prices are, because if I want to buy apples, theoretically, not theoretically, legally, I should obtain 3 different apple prices. So the more pricing, the better. Again, delivery times and locations. For us, our warehouse opens at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's when the delivery happens, because our drivers take those goods and turn around and head out to the schools, and they're on the road by about 7:30 in the morning. So if you're delivering to me, you need to be at my dock at 6 o'clock in the morning. Again, frequency of payment. Vendors have to deal with school districts and the fact that payments are authorized by the Board of Education, and those meetings are twice a month. So you have to get me your invoices so I can process them, and in our district, the cutoff for a board payment is a week before the board meeting. So you're a vendor who could be looking at maybe delivering to me every week, but I may be able to only process payments to get you a payment once or twice a month. So you've got that whole finance picture for schools. But that being said, not quite half of our budget is, and we have about a $4.1 million budget, is spent on food and milk and bread and groceries. So the potential is there for a lot of business. Okay. Lots of opportunities for buying local. Again, fresh products, obviously, lots of, and those of you who've been on the Leopold Center, they have the miles, things traveled chart that you can figure, food miles. So clearly, if I'm buying apples from Sandroad Orchard rather than apples from the state of Washington, lots fewer food miles involved in that. Again, some unique products. There have been discussions with districts and growers who get together and actually, well, what would work for you? What can we grow for you? So you can look at maybe some unique products that aren't as readily available through your traditional distributor. Again, it supports the farmers and economy, and Kemiar has done it, and I know I've heard him speak about not only the impact schools make on local food, but the restaurants, and those of you in Iowa City certainly know about local restaurants and how much that impacts the local economy. Food source. Obviously, if I'm buying from Sandroad Orchards, I know the man, I've met the man, I've been to the orchard, so you know exactly where your apples are coming from and who's growing them and all those kinds of wonderful things. And then customer acceptance. When we did apples last year, huge difference from the commercial apples. We knew, again, buying in with the kids, being able to get fresh, being able to buy local, those kinds of things. Okay, so here are some of the challenges. Clearly, we live in Iowa, where the growing season ends sometime, depending on what you're growing, in September, October, and doesn't start up again until maybe April, unless you've got some hoop houses or whatever. I'm not the farmer, so that's not my expertise. So what do you want me to purchase in December when we've got 10 inches of snow on the ground, is the other question. That being said, however, and Jason and I have talked about it, and I know we've talked about it at some of the things that Kemi and I have attended, is we have lots of school kitchens that aren't used when it's growing season, and can you get some of the grants, the Kellogg's grants, some farm to school grants, to look at that as a business opportunity. A grower could come into a kitchen, and we'll use Des Moines because they have a huge, there you have a food factory. Go into the kitchen, hire some staff, and process the corn, process the broccoli, process the cauliflower. The gentleman, I can't remember who has the freezing tunnel. Yes. So freeze the broccoli, and then I could buy the broccoli in November and December and January and February. So I think there is a lot of business opportunity, because Iowa used to have, I think, over 30-some types of products between livestock, grains, fruits and vegetables. We also used to have canneries, meat processing facilities, so I think there's lots of opportunity to look at revitalizing the small business piece. Also, we've talked about what kinds of produce and products to buy in our district. All of our eggs are frozen pasteurized. We don't deal with raw eggs. All of our beef is pre-cooked crumbles. And for the most part, unless it comes through USDA, all of our chicken is also pre-cooked. We just have we deal with too many food safety and sanitation concerns to cook raw. So that's another issue. So the whole produce is a very safe arena to purchase in. And again, with the Farm to School chapter, again, we are hoping to get lots of resources, talk to farmer growers, set up some buying communities, things like that, have a discussion with what's available, look at those kinds of things. And that's what I've got.